I'm joined by the author and associate editor of The Spectator, Douglas Murray. Well, Douglas, you've been waiting patiently over there in Israel. What did you make of that extraordinary interview?
Listening to Jeremy Corbyn, let alone Len, talking about the Middle East and the way to solve the Middle East's problems is like watching somebody trying to do brain surgery whilst wearing boxing gloves. I mean, it is so cack-handed, it's just beyond belief. Nobody in this region could make any sense of their dreams and claims and assertions. Everything that they said falls apart on first analysis.
And the most extraordinary thing to me was Jeremy Corbyn's resolute refusal to answer two simple questions. Should Hamas stay in power, and are they a terror group? He wouldn't do it. I mean, Len McCluskey answered both, but Corbyn was paralysed. He could not answer those two basic questions.
But I'm afraid, as you know, Piers, that's a character career trait of Jeremy Corbyn's. It was just the same with Sinn Féin IRA. He always seems to keep the door open to terror groups, whether they are anti-British terror groups like the IRA or anti-Israel groups like Hamas. I don't know why he feels this need. He's never been involved in any international peace negotiations anywhere, certainly never anywhere with any success, never anywhere with any prominence even. So it's always bizarre to hear him talking as if he's sort of been the UN Secretary General for the last 50 years. And
quite scary to think he was nearly potentially Prime Minister of his country. I mean, it does beg the question, if this had happened to us, what would his reaction have been? If he's not able to say that Hamas, after what they did on October the 7th, are a terrorist organisation, what would have happened if a terror organisation had killed 1,500 British people on our soil if he'd been running the country?
Absolutely, and I'd add to that. I mean, you know, he talks about the importance of clarity and being absolutely clear on things, and is very unclear on things himself. What he just said there about the Palestinians and Hamas, and I mean, he and Len McCluskey talk about Palestine, for instance. What do they mean by Palestine? Do they mean the West Bank? Do they mean the West Bank and Gaza? Do they mean the West Bank, Gaza and East Jerusalem? Like, what is this state? Do they mean everything in pre-1948 or post-1948? They never say. They just talk about this non-existent state that still doesn't exist because for decade after decade, people like them have supported the worst possible elements and have encouraged them in this delusion that Israel can be disappeared. It's not going to be disappeared. And yet this delusion is encouraged, among other things, among some people in the Palestinian leadership, which is why when they're offered 99% of a state, as they have been time and time again, they say no, because 99% isn't 100%.
Well, that clip I found of Bill Clinton from a few years ago was very telling, both in his description of what Hamas do, which they're now doing, and also in the fact that he had a great settlement there, and Arafat at the last minute screwed him, just walked away.
Absolutely. Arafat walked away as his predecessors had walked away time and again. It could all be so different, you know. It could all be so different. Just going back to what's happened in Gaza since the withdrawal. You know, remember, the Israelis left Gaza in 2005. It was extremely traumatic for the people of Israel because they saw members of their own army pulling forcibly Jewish families from their homes because they said that they would give Gaza over to the Palestinians. There were elections. Hamas won the elections, killed their Fatah rivals, and then never had another election. How can anyone defend this group or believe they're a legitimate government of Palestine? And the idea that they're any part... I tell you one thing, Piers, that's very, very obvious when you're here in the period after the massacres of October the 7th. It doesn't matter whether you're right-wing or left-wing. It doesn't matter whether you're a peacenik, like many of the people who were murdered in the kibbutz, or a supporter of Benjamin Netanyahu. Nobody in Israel believes that they can live beside Hamas. Nobody.
No. Well, why would you? I mean, Hamas are dedicated in their charter to the eradication of Israel, and they've proven on October the 7th they will kill as many Jewish people as they can get their hands on. And the Hamas spokesman only last week said they want to do what happened on October the 7th again and again and again. You can't do peace with people with that mentality.
I was at one of the trauma hospitals earlier speaking to some survivors of the October attacks. I was very struck particularly by one man in his, I suppose, 40s, 50s. He and his family hid in their safe room, but they didn't lock safe rooms. They couldn't lock because they were for bombs, not for Hamas terrorists coming door to door. His daughter managed to survive. He lost both his legs. He lost his wife, died in front of him and his daughter, and he lost his 14-year-old son. And after this man described what happened when his boy breathed his last, he said, look, I'm a leftist.